January has finally come to an end, and it really felt like the longest year ever. But that means it's time to recap everything I watched in the month of January. This is something new I'm bringing to the channel. It's going to be sort of a recap as well as a Letterboxd overview. If you're not following me over at Letterboxd yet, you can find that. The link will be in the description. But pretty much I log everything I watch throughout every single month on Letterboxd, whether new or old releases. So I thought it'd be fun to just list every single movie and series I watched in the month of January and every month to follow. I kicked off the month with watching Bitcoin, a Netflix documentary that is pretty much like every other Netflix documentary about a few con artists that somehow scammed the cryptocurrency market, in particular Venmo, and stole millions and millions of dollars, and how they reaped the benefits but also had to pay the consequences on the other end. It's narrated by the leader of the pack, and he is just... I really hated the guy. I really hated this documentary. There was nothing special about it. It was sleek, over stylized, and having him be the narrator, he's just such a big douchebag that I couldn't get behind anything that was going on, and I was very happy when it was over. Then I decided to rewatch The Adam Project, the Ryan Reynolds, Walker Scobell time travel movie directed by Sean Levy, who's going to be directing the new Deadpool 3. This is a movie that I really liked when it first came out, but to be honest with you, I actually enjoyed it a lot more upon rewatch. The family core dynamics are strong and strike a chord in a way that transcends the entire genre. Scobell and Reynolds might as well be the same person. Jennifer Garner is MVP at playing mom, and sure, the CGI fest can be a bit much, and the quality doesn't always necessarily match the ambition. However, the thematics are so rich and resonate so deeply with me that the technical imperfections are forgivable. I think it's just a good reminder to love your people while they're here, live now for the future you want to create, and embrace life to the fullest, always. Yeah, the movie still rips so hard. And then we get to the first theatrical January release in Night Swim. Look, I didn't hate this movie, but it's not good either. It introduces a concept of a haunted pool that could have been intriguing, and you'd think of all these different possibilities of ways that they can make it interesting and engaging, and they just, they don't do that. It's got all the cliches and obvious jump scares and over-exposition that you would expect from a January horror movie from Blumhouse. But I will say, for the first 2/3 of the movie, I was kind of on board. There was nothing about it that really stuck out to me as bad. That third act, though... That's a different story. There's a review up on the channel now if you want to hear more of my in-depth thoughts. Then I watched Self-Reliance, the Jake Johnson directorial debut that premiered at South by Southwest last year but was released on Hulu this year, so I'm classifying it as a 2024 release. This movie was wacky, man. While watching it, I couldn't help but think that this is exactly what I would expect from someone like Jake Johnson. And you know what? It really worked for me. As a first feature, he went all out with this quirky concept and found a way to center it very effectively with a core message of self-care, independence, confronting grief, and overcoming it. The scenario of a dark web game show where you're hunted by ninjas and Ellen DeGeneres impersonators is as far out as it can get, but there is a heart and raw energy that really fuels the whole thing. It felt fresh, and overall it was just simply a fun time. I haven't gotten this feeling while watching a movie since I saw The Art of Self-Defense in 2019. It's darkly comedic, but also kind of cozy. I've been getting into stand-up comedy as of late, so I decided to check out Pete Davidson's new Netflix comedy special, Turbo Fonzarelli. Say what you want about Pete Davidson, I'm not his biggest fan, but I do think he has moments to where he is somewhat funny. But then again, I've watched a few of his specials in the past and thought they delivered absolutely nothing special whatsoever. So to my surprise, I would say Turbo Fonzarelli is probably the best thing Pete Davidson has ever done. It starts off a little rough and has a lot of similarities to the things that don't work for me with his humor, but as he gets comfortable and as it sets in, it really started to work for me. He's got a few good bits about driving a car into a house, coming in contact with his stalker, as well as some cancer jokes and a lot of sexual innuendos regarding his mother that were sort of off-putting, but in the grand scheme of things, this wasn't terrible. Then I rewatched Meet the Parents with Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro, and they simply do not make comedies like this anymore, folks. It was so uncomfortable yet hilarious that even though I've seen this movie a million times, the funny parts still made me laugh. I still chuckled. There's this awkwardness in the air the entire runtime that just never goes away. If this is how all Meet the Parents scenarios play out in new relationships, then I will simply stay single forever. It also delivered arguably the most iconic prayer scene in a movie.
Oh, dear God.
Then I watched Mean Girls in theaters. a movie musical based on the Broadway musical that's based on the movie. I was not anticipating this movie whatsoever, and I did not expect it to be good at all. But in hindsight, while it being unnecessary proved to be true, it was a lot better than I expected. While it's mainly a beat-for-beat remake from the original Mean Girls, incorporating the musical twist kept it somewhat fresh. It doesn't touch the original, and I can't see it having the same cultural impact whatsoever, but it does contain some important messaging that reigns true and that many people will be able to resonate with. It's kind of fetch. You can also check out my review for this for more in-depth thoughts. Then from there, I watched another new Netflix documentary, American Nightmare. Now, my initial first response as this story began to unfold was, oh, this woman is psychotic. She watched David Fincher's Gone Girl way too many times. But man, was I wrong. This had me hooked completely from beginning to end and equally as infuriated at the level of disrespect and disregard for this woman's experience by an entire police department. Sure, as a viewer, it's easy to make assumptions and comparisons based on the similarities to a movie I've seen, but for a cop to dismiss the validity of her story completely for the same reason without doing any actual research, holy smokes. It's an insane watch with many twists and more layers than you'd expect. And when it comes to Netflix documentaries, I would actually say this is one of the better ones. It seemed like they put a little bit more care and effort into making this watchable, and it's only 3 episodes long, so it really flies by. Then I checked out the Ted series on Peacock. I never thought I'd say this, but bring on more Ted. It was surprisingly very good. McFarlane's humor is stronger than ever, mixing the characters we love from the movies with the style of his animated work, but in a live-action format. It makes for a hilarious and equally heartfelt time. Ted is in peak form, but the supporting cast is just as entertaining. A family sitcom on steroids and lots of weed. I really enjoyed this. Then I watched Neighbors from 2014 for the first time, and it's alright. After a while, it just feels like the same bit repeating over and over for a bit too long, but it's enjoyable enough, I guess. Zac Efron and Dave Franco are the standouts, and I love Rose Byrne in this type of role. It's a modern-day comedy trying to recapture some of the magic of the genre from the early 2000s, and while not fully reaching that level, it's a fun enough time nonetheless. Then I finally got to check out Godzilla Minus One, but minus color. And this movie was just awesome. By far the best Godzilla film I've had the pleasure of witnessing. Yamazaki just gets it in a way that Americanized adaptations have just never been able to. It's very insightful and provides a very layered perspective on the damage war can cause for both sides, not just the physical calamity, but the inward trauma. It examines PTSD, survivor's guilt, and grief with such complexity. The arrival of Godzilla is almost used as a device for a country to rise above the ashes and come together again to take back their land and their pride. Maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but all of that to say, I've never been so invested in the human element in these MonsterVerse movies, but it's truly the heartbeat of the story this time around. The visual effects, the cinematography, the sound design are all superb, and every sequence feels meticulously crafted. It's sort of reminiscent of Jaws and even Jurassic Park to an extent, but also extremely true to the Toho films from the 60s and 70s. Just a really great time at the movies, and I'm completely shocked that this did not get nominated for Best International Feature. Then I had the pleasure of watching Ava DuVernay's Origin. A poignant, thought-provoking, and eye-opening piece that examines the levels of humanity and lack thereof across the world, shedding light on caste and the detriment it's had for generations. I was not familiar with caste prior, as I'm sure many can relate to, but Origin makes a strong case for why the discussion of caste is so important and why it needs to be acknowledged for our world to ever get to a place of full solidarity. It can seem like a stretch at times trying to create connective tissue between racism in America to Nazi Germany to the Dalits in India, but there's something there. The film contains some of the most haunting imagery I've seen in years and performances that will break you emotionally. While it's flawed in some aspects, at times having to juggle a lot all at once, it's a very important film nonetheless. Then I watched 1 Hour Photo starring Robin Williams for the first time, and why do more people not talk about this movie? It's probably Robin Williams' most underrated performance. It's disturbing, layered, unsettling. It also contains some absolutely gorgeous cinematography. Every shot looks candy-coated, dreamlike, nightmarish at times. Robin Williams plays Cy, the photo guy, who is an extremely sad and lonely individual. He desperately seeks human connection, so much so that he sees no harm in attaching himself to the lives of his customers. The fantasies he creates in his head, the longing he feels to be part of something. It's easy to sympathize for his character, but the way the movie unfolds, it becomes harder and harder to feel for him. It effortlessly transitions from a drama to an unsettling thriller. It could potentially become a new favorite of mine, a criminally overlooked film that I think deserves a lot more recognition, so please watch it if you haven't seen it, let alone heard of it before. Then I ended the month with Dusty Slay Working Man, another Netflix comedy special. Dusty Slay is not someone I was familiar with prior, but I gotta say he's gonna be one that I keep my eye on moving forward. His southern charm, awkward mannerisms, and offbeat delivery kind of made this a very comforting watch in a way. Hearing him ramble on about his previous work history and his relationship with drugs and alcohol, it felt very personal, at the same time being very uncomfortable, and at the same time being equally as hilarious. All I can say is, we're having a good time. And that is everything I watched in the month of January. A few stinkers, a couple surprises in the mix. Let's hope February is a bit better, but I really don't expect it to be. Like I said, follow me on Letterboxd if you want to keep up with everything I watched throughout the month. And let me know if you enjoyed this format for this style of video, and I'll continue to make them moving forward. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, I'll see y'all later. Peace out.